Hey guys, I'm Dr. B.J.Hardick. In 2009, I wrote the Maximized Living Nutrition Plans. And a couple years later, everybody started asking about the paleo diet. I want to take a moment just to differentiate a couple of the key differences between maximized living and what the world calls paleo versus really what was developed by Dr. Loren Cordain, for whom I have so much respect, who did a lot of the early research into the paleo diet before everybody started talking about it. Dr. Cordain out of Colorado, he really wanted to research and see, what were people designed to eat before civilization, before modernization of foods, never mind just boxed foods, but just even the way we started to modernize the food system. And there's a lot of things on which we agree. And I'm going to talk specifically about meats. I want to talk a little bit about sugar, and I'm going to talk about vegetables as well. Because a lot of people now, they think that you're going paleo if you just have like meat, no sugar, and then no bread. But in fact, there's so many more key differences to understand here. Thinking of meats, you've got to understand something. Like Dr. Cordain, and I would also say, like salami, processed meats, deli meats, these are not paleo just because they're meat. Dr. Cordain would obviously emphasize the importance of having wild game, fresh fish that could be caught with a spear as opposed to something that is caught from the bottom of the ocean is a whole different story. Something like grass-fed beef versus grain-fed beef, because it actually changes and distorts the essential fatty acid content in the cow. But one key difference is this. I think a lot of people still think that paleo can be anything that's just meat because it's a dense food. In Maximized Living, we've always advised against pork and shellfish because they can be fairly toxic animals because the nature in which they live, the fact that they don't sweat, and some of the, obviously like shellfish, they clean the ocean floor, which is filthy to begin with, so they're one of the most toxic meats that someone can possibly consume, and therefore I advise against it. Dairy is also on the subject of meat as well, and of course, this very much depends on the culture. But if somebody's going to be consuming dairy, I would say let's make sure we're consuming dairy only from healthy animals that are not sick and only from animals that have not been fed foods that they were never supposed to eat in the first place. So now let's talk about sugar, because certainly a lot of people think, going sugar-free means that something is automatically paleo. Well, the best source of sugar, the best source of fructose would be fruit. So in Maximized Living, we've said, hey, listen, on the core nutrition plan, let's include the great, healthy, God-made fruits. And of course, in paleo, they've also said, hey, you know what? Fruits were designed to consume, and this is the safest way to consume fructose. What we do in North America is we pull the fructose out, add it into high fructose corn syrup, so now we're consuming it with no fiber, no water, no minerals, no nutrients, and of course fructose on its own starts to wreck the liver. So we've always identified fruit should be had in its natural source, fructose should be consumed in its natural source, which is indeed fruit. The core plan, go for it. However, in Maximized Living, we've taken it a step further. We've looked at to see how people respond on not just a no sugar diet, but also eliminating the things that turn into sugar, like the higher sugar fruits, bananas, pineapples, mangoes. You know what? These things do convert to sugar quicker than lower sugar fruits like berries and Granny Smith apples. And therefore, we've advised against them for people that have metabolic syndrome, people that are dealing with cancer, people that are dealing with cognitive disorders, and all the other conditions that are listed on my site, because certainly limiting the amount of sugar in the body definitely can help the body get into more of a fat-burning and ketogenic state, which we know is not necessarily the reason why they got the disease in the first place, but can certainly be therapeutic for the body when they're dealing with that condition. And this obviously goes without saying, if we're going to have a dessert, let's not have that dessert with even honey or maple syrup or something that's just a gooey liquid, which is still 100% sugar. We want to have those things ideally made with fruit, or you know what, maybe stevia, because it's a plant-based sweetener, will not affect somebody's blood sugar. And lastly, just thinking vegetables. It's so key that vegetable consumption is organic. And again, a lot of people think deli meats and veggies is paleo. Well, you know what's maximized? Naturally raised meats and organic vegetables. Pesticides, there's 1,600 different chemicals that contribute to at least over 400 different types of pesticides that are used and that are approved by the FDA. And we don't even know what these do in conjunction with each other. I do know this though, that if somebody's having difficulty going fully organic, you can look on the Environmental Working Group's guide of the Clean 15, and the dirty dozen, because every year they update it and they say these 12 types of vegetables, they're sprayed with more pesticides than anything. Really, we're talking about all produce. And that's why we need to be careful if we're having something like a red pepper or an apple or a strawberry. I mean, these things are loaded with pesticides, which are always associated with hormonal problems because, of course, pesticides mimic estrogen. If we're gonna have some vegetables and they're not organic, at least make sure they're on the Clean 15. Make sure that you're having the vegetables and the fruits that have the least amount of pesticides, but ideally, we'd move to 100% organic. How on earth do I eat out and still do it in a maximized, healthy kind of way? So I wanna talk about 4 things. I wanna talk about meat, vegetables, I wanna talk about all of your sauces, and I wanna talk about what to drink. Grains out there. Yeah. So the paleo community, the maximized living community, a lot of people into CrossFit, they don't want grains at all. But
like
then
no grains.
They don't want grains at all. So grains are very inflammatory. They do convert to sugar even if they're whole wheat.